Hi everyone, I'm happy to hold this great event about lawyer in the new innovation world with Kathleen Killin, global legal platform use case lead at Thomson Reuters. Thomson Reuters is one of the world's most trusted providers of answers, helping professionals make confident decision and run better businesses. In the next arenas, law, tax, compliance, government, and media. And my name is Mykyta Zhukov. I am CEO at Zhukov Legal Family Office, co-founder of the Legal Design Project, chairman of the Ukrainian Bar Association, Committee on Constitutional Law, Administrative Law, and Human Rights, coordinator of Ukrainian Bar Association Young Lawyers Forum. Nice to meet you, Kathleen.
Nice to meet you too. You're very busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here today to speak with you and to speak with your colleagues from the Ukrainian Bar Association about technology and trends that we're seeing in the market, how technology can impact them as well. I like to be very practical with advice and practical with our conversation. Instead of just saying, AI is up here. I'll get a little into how I define AI and how I talk about it. But I also like that practical aspect. So a little about me. I'm located in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I am a lawyer by trade. I joined Thomson Reuters after practicing in commercial real estate and leasing. And I joined Thomson Reuters to lead their Contract Express and HiQ business. And so Contract Express and Mykyta and I will get into this in a little bit about document automation and what document automation is. It is the product that we have at Thomson Reuters that does document automation is called Contract Express. Some of you may be familiar with it. And I led the business there. So everything from the sales to marketing to really driving that growth in the Canadian market. But I also had this interesting kind of segue where I had a background in technology from a startup in California. So and having that legal knowledge, I was able to be like a translator between the marketing departments, between our legal departments, between our clients who are telling me their problems, and then also our technology and product teams. So actually developing the technologies. And that is how I got my current role, was being that translator of sorts. I moved from the Canadian business to the global business to lead the product team for underneath our legal tech business. I'm a leader there, looking at the entire platform as a whole. So that's all of our legal products together that lawyers use, what they do, where we can buy new products to fit in, and where do we see in the future for strategy and informing the business? Where do we see in the future? Where are we going to be growing? So, of course, a really big, exciting area that has blossomed in the past few months is the ChatGPT. And where is that going to be growing, and how will that be impacting the legal profession in the future as well? So I know you had some questions for me, Mykyta, so I'll hand it back to you and we can get started on those questions. And something I wanted to mention too, although I don't speak Ukrainian, if anyone has questions coming from participants, are they able to write in the chat to you, Mykyta, and then you can translate for me?
Yeah. And I think that, our participants can also use English language and
Awesome.
So thank you. Thank you very much. I have a lot of questions to you. Could you tell us about today's activity at Thomson Reuters in legal innovation?
Sure. So we have a number of different products that we focus on, or we focus on different. Instead of let's take products out of it. So let's think of pain points. What are the different things that lawyers do day in and day out? Well, they get, let's say, the intake that comes in. So their client approaches them and says, I have a problem. Well, how does that happen? So that's one area of focus that we're looking at, is we're looking at how can technology assist the actual running of the business? So that interaction that you have, let's say, with your client. So let's say building a client portal where all the information can come in on a platform instead of it coming via email or the phone or a face-to-face meeting, especially in light of the past few years with the pandemic, but then of course, with everything that's been happening in your country for the past year, is that we might not have the same luxuries that we had, say, 5 years ago of meeting with those clients in person anymore. And so we're focusing on how can we be catering to our clients, and how can lawyers be catering to their clients and be creating, let's say, these client portals where all of their information is stored, where their meetings are held, and all of that. So that's one area that we're focusing on, the actual business of law. Then we also have doing the work. So that can be broken down into, let's say, research. So we have our Westlaw product lines as well as practical law. And Westlaw is our legal research tool. Practical law is more of, let's say, an encyclopedia of legal knowledge where you can ask it regular questions, ask the system regular questions, and it will have encyclopedic responses come up. We have lawyer editors who actually write all of that. So we have thousands of lawyer editors around the globe that write that information, that majority of them were 25 years practicing law, and then we hire them to write that information in that encyclopedia. And then we have, so now let's see if we think of the process of the lawyer journey. We figured out, okay, we have our client, they came to us with a problem, we figured out what the problem is, we've done our legal research. Now, maybe if we're doing contracts, we have to actually draw up, let's say, an opinion back to the client, or we have to draw up the contract itself to get started on the legal work. Or if we're a litigator and we're in the courts, we have to make submissions to the court. So what piece of technologies then? So that's another area that we're focusing on, is the drafting. Whether you're drafting for court documents, or if you're drafting for client use, or if you're drafting to send for negotiations, that's where that Contract Express product fits in, which is our document automation software. Now, I figured everyone on this call has likely purchased something online. And so I'm going to dig into a little bit of what document automation is now. Is that okay, Mykyta, if I focus a bit on that? Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
When we purchase something online, we have to put in our information. We put in my name, me now, because I think I spend too much money online, don't tell my husband, is when I start putting the first letter K, everything pre-populates. So my name, my address, I put in my first number of my credit card, it comes up right away. It's like, oh, I know you. And so with that, when you're filling in that information, you're filling in an automated form that then tells the company that you're purchasing from how do they prepare that slip to then send it in the mail to your house, or how do they charge your credit card. Very similar for document automation. So with document automation, what you've done in the back end is, let's say you have a very basic contract. And so as we all know, in contracts, you have a few major points that have to be in every single contract. You have your parties' names, you have the date. Let's say it's a purchase and sale. So you have your parties' names, you have the dates, you have what you are buying, you have the amount, you have maybe a date that it needs to be delivered by. And then you could have a few other clauses, let's say governing law. You could have, if there is an indemnity, and a few other bits and bobs. So what you've done before you come to the drafting stage is you've automated that document. So then now, as you're practicing law, you are just filling in information like you're filling in one of those forms for an online purchase. So you have, let's say, client name, and you would just type in their name once, and it would pre-populate that name through the entire document. You would also, let's say, put in date. Maybe a little date bubble will come up. So now with document automation, and this was my area of focus, and also a very big passion of mine is document automation, is you're no longer having to go through all of the documents over and over again to try to find either those little tiny drafting dots. I'm not sure how all of your firms or your corporations work, but my firm, when I was there, we had a little black dot that meant I had to input information into there. So I was looking, especially if you had a 50-page lease, you're looking line by line for that little black dot of what do I put in there. And I remember one time I was reviewing someone else's work, and the gentleman's name, let's say his name was John Smith. Okay. Well, the lawyer had input their name different every time. It was John Smith, then Jonathan Smith, then Johnny Smith, then Jay Smith. Well, there was no continuity in the document. And so with document automation now, which is a huge area of focus for us, is you're able to put that once, John Smith, and then it comes up through the entire document and you don't have to put it in again. You're not looking for those drafting dots anymore. And when we put it on its head, so if we pump up the stock automation and we add AI onto it as well, is that you can start using artificial intelligence tools to draft your documents to maybe tell you last time that you were engaging with a party like this, buying, let's say, bicycles for your client, this is where you got to. This is where your negotiations ended up after back and forth for 4 months. Do you want to start here? And so it's creating those suggestions to then save time for your clients, where you could be really working in a flat fee structure and you could be adding more to your bottom line. So is it all resonating, Mykyta? You tell me. And I see there's a hand up.
Yeah, we have one question. No.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Unless it was an accident.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's really interesting, really exciting for me about your story about automation of legal automation, automation of documents. It's really interesting. And I have next question: What the future do you build in at Thomson Reuters?
So let's stay in the drafting area. And so as I was saying, is that you have these document automation, the platform that we have, Contract Express. What we're doing now, what we're focusing on is building it with AI as well and pumping it up with AI. And so when I was saying about the idea of having those suggested clauses of saying, you got here before, do you want to start there now? Or having analytics associated with your documents. So for example, it could pull and say, oh, you've input that you are representing, let's say HSBC, and you are purchasing, I don't know, a piece of technology from Microsoft. And then it says, according to internet data, so let's say according to what's going on in the market, other people who have contracted with Microsoft recently, these are favorable terms that they have come to. So what we're trying to look at from a drafting perspective is also seeing not only what's in your documents and what's in your knowledge base and what have you done previously, but also what is the market doing. And that's the benefit of with Thomson Reuters, because we have that practical law resource, is that we have a huge amount of knowledge of what's happening in the market. And then we're taking that and pulling it and putting it into this drafting portal in Microsoft Word and really seeing what clauses are best in the market right now and what is not, let's say, as agreeable for the different types of clients. And so we're really trying to see how can we streamline that drafting process and how we can also assist our clients from a kind of a one-stop shop.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thomson Reuters is a really a big company, and have you find some small startups maybe and then buy it and then implement some technology in activity of Thomson Reuters in products of Thomson Reuters?
We have. So that was one of the major projects I was on last year, was the acquisition of the startup called ThoughtTrace. And we also have HiQ is a major product of ours as well. It's our platform. We did acquire them about 4 years ago now as well. They were a larger startup at the time, but the specific one that I worked on was ThoughtTrace. And their niche is artificial intelligence. And we acquired them to fit into our journey and into our story that we're telling about that contract lifecycle management and really accelerating our artificial intelligence business. What we're focusing on with them right now is as I said, we have that drafting and that building of the clause bank, but we also have the due diligence side. And so, of course, if you have any large merger, or if you have an acquisition occurring, or for example, if a client comes to you and says, I want to know what's in all of my contracts, instead of you sitting there and doing line by lines anymore, what you can do is utilize this technology that we have now rebranded as document intelligence. And you can use that for it to go through all of your different contracts, look for specific terms that you have called out. Let's say, for example, if you're working for a major landlord and you want to see leasable area, or you want to see how many buildings have units that are not being rented right now, instead of doing that by hand and manually like we all did in the past, now you can run the tool document intelligence through all of your contracts, and then at the end it will have a report for you that will state let's say how much leasable area is vacant right now, so you could see how much money is the client losing on that. Do they need to then adjust, or whatever it may be from their business decision?
Yeah, okay. So what is your vision of the legal services market in a few years? How will it be transformed?
So that's a huge question. Thank you. So I think that we are on a really interesting trajectory right now. I'm not really sure. So I think a big buzzword that people like to talk about often is blockchain. I personally I'm not an expert in blockchain whatsoever. My view on blockchain is that I think it's very interesting, but I am not sure where it's going to move in the future. So let's take that out of the situation and not even talk about blockchain right now with the future of the legal industry. Rather, I think that we're going to see pressures more and more coming from corporate clients to lawyers. So, for example, we're seeing a lot of our law firm clients coming to us and saying, okay, I use this piece of technology. So let's say I use Contract Express. I want to respond to an RFP or an RFI for RBC, so Royal Bank of Canada, let's say. And in the RFP, it says specifically what pieces of technology will you use to complete my legal work? Can you, Thomson Reuters, help me answer this question, because you know your products best? So what we're seeing more and more is that external pressure from the corporate clients onto the law firm saying, we know the technology's there. We don't want to be paying someone to do line by lines anymore. We assume you will be using artificial intelligence to do our work, or we will not bring you business unless you're using artificial intelligence to do our work. So a really interesting organization. And I think that this is also going to continue to grow and blossom. A really interesting law firm out of New York City is called Cleary Gottlieb. And what they've done there is they've actually built an arm of the firm called Cleary X, and it's an alternative legal service provider. And I think what's really interesting with what they're doing there is that they are using technology to cater to client needs that maybe the client has said, I am not going to be paying $600 an hour for an attorney to be, or a lawyer to be reviewing these documents. So then Cleary X has come in and said, that's great. You can come to us, which there's still an arm of the law firm, and say, we'll do it for you and we'll utilize technology, but we'll do it in a flat fee. And so this trend of law firms saying and responding to their corporate clients and saying, okay, I can bring the technology in-house, but I also can set up this alternative legal service provider that's another revenue stream for our firm. I think that trend is going to continue as well. We have, as I said, Cleary X out of New York, and then there's a number of the magic circles, so the very large law firms in London that have set up these their ALSPs. We also have, of course, the Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, so those consulting firms that have set up this alternative legal service provider scheme. But theirs is a bit different, where they don't have that intense knowledge from the partners that can then, and also just the reputation of their partners, of their legal partners, to be completing that legal work in a new way. Now, on the flip side, when we have, let's say, large corporates, I think that they're in the future, the corporates, we talked about the corporate and the law firm relationship. I think in the future, we're also going to see large corporates wanting to be streamlining their contract management more, wanting to know more what's inside of their contracts. We're going to have lawyers that are, let's say, the chief legal officer of large corporations. They're going to be making far more business decisions. They're not just going to be doing traditional legal work anymore. And so I think that'll be a really interesting transition as we continue to see that move. And then overall in the legal industry, because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the move to work from home and the move to people realizing that, oh my goodness, I can do just as much work or more work and be just as or more profitable if I work from home because I don't have to commute. You could see I'm at home right now. I've got my kids' art all behind me. I didn't have to commute into the office today, which would have taken me over an hour. So I use that to work. I think what we're going to continue to see is this pressure from the employees onto the management saying, we work just as well. Let's utilize technology and continue to utilize technology to be working with our clients and to be working from home because, frankly, I get to see my kids more. I think that's going to be huge as well. I think the 5 days in the office work week is not going to be a way of the future. And I think if people are going to be imposing that, there's going to be huge pushback.
Yeah, I agree with you. What should be the lawyer of the future? Maybe it's time for us to start learning to program.
So, okay, that's really interesting because that has been a question that comes up a lot. I teach here at Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto, and I lecture there quite often, and I lecture to law schools around the world. And that's a question that law students say to me all the time. They say, should I be doing a coding camp? Should I be doing a coding academy? Should I be learning how to make the products? And I say to them, first of all, you're a law student. You've got a lot on your plate right now. Just relax. Let's breathe. Okay. So I take a deep breath. And then I say, you don't need to learn how to code. You don't need to learn how to do, let's say, the very traditional computer science background. What you do need to know, though, is that there is technology out there. That technology can help you do your job faster, quicker, more efficiently, and with less risk. You should know that when you're applying to law firms, the majority of law firms, I would say, at least in the Canadian market, when I say majority, I mean a huge majority of law firms are either utilizing technologies right now or are looking to utilize technologies and be more efficient. So if you were a lawyer, let's say you're in first year law school right now, if I was back then, if I was there now, or if I was advising someone, I would say, when you are in your classes, see if, for example, if you're doing a contract law paper, maybe don't do a contract paper on very traditional topic. Maybe you can do it on something like, so I wrote a paper that was published a few years ago on metadata in documents. So that means, sending a document that has markups by accident to another party. That's why the easiest thing to do is save as PDF and then send that on. I said, but what you could do is choose, let's say, a topic about innovation or choose a topic about technology and skew that to the course that you're taking right now. I think also it's so important for the lawyers of the future for them to be involved in clinics. So legal clinics, business law clinics, family law clinics. And when they're in those clinics, so actually practicing the ins and outs of how they can work with clients and actually having files that they're managing, be thinking about how can they be more efficient using technologies. And that was a big project that I led a few years ago, was bringing Contract Express to Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto with their business law clinic. And we utilized Contract Express to automate a number of the documents. And we had the students actually automate documents. So I did teach them a bit of that in and out of the coding of documents. And then they used those for their actual clients. And we found an exponential growth of the amount of clients they were able to cater to in that 1 year, because the work was taking a shorter amount of time to get done. So long story short, if I was talking to a lawyer of the future, I would say, really look know that technology's out there, be up and informed as to how technology is impacting the legal profession. Be aware of what the law firms, when you're applying to a law firm, be aware of the different types of products that they may be using in their practice, so that you're familiar with them when you start your job there or even an interview. And then, of course, when you get that practical experience in your actual classes, so write on maybe legal tech or legal innovation topics, or you can also be thinking about inefficiencies or innovation when you are catering to your clients in those legal clinics, if you have that opportunity.
Yeah, one of the most popular questions which I hear from especially young lawyers is should lawyers think about creating their startups to secure a place in the world of future innovation in the field of law, or some legal activities will remain? What is your opinion about this?
So we'll always need lawyers. There actually recently, there was a startup out of California with a gentleman, his name is Josh Browder, who was the CEO. It was a startup called Do Not Pay. And he, in early this year, he stated that he was going to have a robot go and argue in court for a parking ticket. And the courts didn't like that. And so he now is going through he's going through the wash, basically, with a number of individuals throughout the court system, but also the media has really, really drilled down onto him, saying that that's not very good. Now, saying that, I think that robots will not be taking over lawyers. I think that lawyers are going to be needed for the future. Definitely. Yes. Because there's a number of tasks, such as client relations, that a robot or a piece of software can't do for you. You, of course, could have those client relations assisted by technology. So utilizing, let's say, that portal system I talked about, where a client can log in and they can talk back and forth with their lawyers on the portal. But then you also will have to have that pick up the phone and have that relationship with your client. When we look at the courts, I highly doubt you're going to have robots arguing cases in my lifetime, at least. You can have, of course, the AI assist in preparing documents that then you submit to the courts. And in fact, in Canada, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice a few years ago, one of the justices there did state that the parties should have used artificial intelligence and legal research to then keep their costs down for when they were claiming costs at the end of the trial. And I found that really interesting that he came out and he said that. I thought that was great. I think we're also going to see a continuation of this digitization of the courts. So for example, online hearings, we're going to be seeing submissions being made virtually rather than, let's say, in person. So a lot of changes that occurred during the pandemic, that's going to be continuing to happen. And we have in Ontario here, that Ontario Superior Court of Justice, as well as the Ontario Court of Appeal, they've both come out and openly stated that they are mandated with this the digitization of the courts, and they're using it as an access to justice play. But I also think that moving forward is that technology is not here to erase lawyers. It's here to enhance the lawyer experience. It's here to, as I was saying earlier, allow the lawyer to have a life outside of law, not be sitting and having to do line by lines anymore. Utilize technology to do that for you. Submit a report, review that report, create a client opinion. Not take hours and hours going through boxes and boxes of materials, let's say in a discovery or in a large acquisition, and you're doing that due diligence work. So again, is that lawyers are, in my opinion, lawyers are here to stay. Our career is not going to go away. However, I think that, and it's a testament to all of you here today, as well as to you, Mykyta, and to the Ukrainian bar, that you do have this focus on technology, because in preparing yourselves for the future, it's so vital to understand that technology is here to stay.
Yeah, okay, thank you. In your opinion, will the legal profession change? For example, there will no longer be a need for contract lawyers, since the process of drafting and drawing up a contract can be fully automated.
No. I think that there will definitely, as I said, there will definitely be a need for lawyers still, contract lawyers, litigators, any type of those types of lawyers. I think what'll be interesting is that there's going to be a large shift into what lawyers are expected to be doing. So for example, is that I think that the associates who used to take hours and hours, let's say drafting, like creating those first drafts or doing the legal research, or doing all of that due diligence through a discovery or through some sort of acquisition process, I think that their day-to-day is going to look very different, because they will not be doing as much of that because technology will be utilized. So what I think is going to happen is that those lawyers in the law firm are going to have far more pressure on them to be doing more business development and business initiatives of bringing business into the firm, instead of them, say, doing those line by lines. Similarly, those who are lawyers who are, let's say, in government or are in large organizations, I think that the expectation put on them will be more about maybe, so if we are in government, it could be working more, let's say, with policymakers, and instead of it doing the traditional drafting experience, is that you're actually trying to assist your people that are creating the law in actually writing that legislation in a, let's say, a more fluid form, or not having as many back and forths with legal when you're creating those legislation or those pieces of policy. Similarly, when you're working in-house, I think what's going to be happening is that a lot of the lawyers who are legal counsel, they're going to be having more business decisions, that they're going to have sales, they're going to have other parts of the organization turning to them and saying, you know, what do you think about X? And it's not, maybe not a pure legal question, but instead they're going to be advising on how to grow that business, or how to grow into, let's say, new markets, but with a legal skew on it as well. Because us as lawyers, we do have a very interesting risk assessment that could be very different, let's say, from someone who's the chief marketing officer, the head of sales. And so I think that really the pressure is going to be more on those mid-career individuals, rather than, let's say, wiping out a specific, say, contract lawyers are not going to be existent anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Legal tech is a way to make the legal world simple and understandable, more clarified. Does this mean that jurisprudence is now too far from being understood by people without legal education? Should jurisprudence be transformed into a simple one for people without legal knowledge?
So I think that with the advent of, so to understand understanding the question is that there's a bit of a concern about legal technology creating the law to be too, let's say, inaccessible for the average person. Is that's what I'm understanding for the question?
Yeah, and plus, presently, some legal tech products make legal word, make legal sentences, documents more clarified, more understandable for for people without legal education? Is it means that today jurisprudence, today law is so far from people without legal technology, and in future law will be more simple and more accessible, more understandable for people without legal knowledge, so people can use some legal instrument without lawyers, maybe.
Yeah. So I think a good case in this, or a good use case, is, let's say, creation of your will. Is that even me, for example, I created my will using an app. I didn't go
Mm-hmm.
to a lawyer to create my will because I have a very straightforward will. I have a husband, I have 2 kids, and we have a house, and that's it. I basically have nothing else. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was able to create it using an app, and it was very accessible. It was very similar to, let's say, those contract express forms: insert your name, insert this, insert this. And then I just was able to get my will done at the end. I printed it off, had 2 people sign it, and it's done. So I think legal technology has been able to really create accessibility with certain areas of the law. So for example, let's say in the creation of wills, there's different products in Ontario. One called, I think, Divorce Mate, that assists people in having very straightforward divorces or separation agreements. So in that family law context, I think that's amazing, especially from an access to justice point of view, where you can have people going on creating, let's say, a basic will or doing a basic separation agreement without having to speak directly to a lawyer and then have all of their, and then I guess raise their fees for how much they're having to charge. The thing is that I think, which is there's a really, really kind of a delicate, I'm trying to think of the word, where there's a line you can cross that gets very kind of gray and iffy when you start talking about legal technology and the access to justice and self-serve. Because at what point is the legal technology providing legal advice? And in accordance to, let's say, the Law Society of Ontario or a number of the bar associations in the United States, and I'm not familiar with the rules on the Ukrainian Bar Association, but I'm assuming it's very similar, is that a piece of technology cannot practice law. A piece of technology cannot be providing legal advice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that legal tech is a phenomenal innovation that has been able to create this access to justice for either very simple pieces for the individual to, let's say, do that will or do that separation agreement, as I've mentioned. I think it also is phenomenal to assist lawyers in doing the work faster and quicker and more efficiently for their clients, to keep fees low, to again enable that access to justice mentality. However, I think that there also is a very delicate line that cannot be crossed, where you don't have a piece of technology that's practicing, quote unquote, practicing law, and that's actually, because the bar associations say, a lawyer practices law. That's under the definition, someone who is called to the Bar of Ontario. And I think that it's important when we look at this access to justice and we see how does technology interact with the general public, we have to ensure that that technology is not offering legal advice that a lawyer would be offering. So in saying that, when we have blogs, let's say we have pieces of information that, using, let's say, the ChatGPT, for example, where you can put in a question and it spits out, let's say, a memo of how this would be addressed or what you should be doing legally. What we have to keep in mind, specifically with something like ChatGPT or with any type of these resources, is that for someone who's not, let's say, educated in the legal space, they may not pick up nuances in the law. They also may not pick up that there's mistakes. So for example, ChatGPT, there's been a number of people that have said over the past few weeks that they were testing it and pushing it to its boundaries, and mistakes were happening. And information that was coming up, the training data was not the best and the purest training data that was behind it. And so the answers that were coming up are actually not accurate, which is why, again, we can have the technology being used by the lawyer, but that's why we pay a lawyer in the end. And that's why lawyers will not go extinct, because they are there to review that document that, say, the ChatGPT produces or that the piece of technology produces. Then they say yes or no, this is right or wrong, and then it goes on to the client. So it's that extra set of eyes before it goes on to the client.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to my mind, presently, legal technology is not about replacing all lawyers in the world. It's about helping to lawyers in their career, in their legal businesses, and something else. Yeah,
exactly.
It's not about staying for lawyer as a profession goodbye, because presently AI can replace lawyers. No, it's like a tool which can only help us. And
Yep.
to my mind, if you are smart, intelligent lawyer, no one can replace you, especially
No.
AI. Yeah.
No, exactly. And that's it, is that, and I keep been saying this for years: enhance, not replace, enhance, not replace. And so we really don't have to be afraid of the years ago there was a movie, I think, with Will Smith, I, Robot, of the robots taking over. Well, that won't be happening in the foreseeable future, at least.
Yeah. Do you think that the war in Ukraine affects the global process in the field of legal innovation?
Totally. Yeah. First of all, it's I won't comment too much on the war in Ukraine, but obviously it's absolutely horrific what is happening there to your people. We have a very large Ukrainian community in Toronto. A lot of my friends are Ukrainian heritage, and it's just it's so horrific. Actually, at the end of my street is the Ukrainian church here on Dundas, and we go and they have a beautiful, if anyone is on the call that's in Toronto, the grandmothers, they make the most incredible Ukrainian food that you can buy. So anyways, as an aside, the war in Ukraine has impacted the legal technology community in massive ways. One is there are so many Ukrainian programmers, Ukrainian people in technology. Massive teams were in Ukraine for creating the actual technology. So data scientists, computer scientists, engineers. The people of Ukraine are incredibly educated. And so there were a lot of businesses in the legal tech space that were relying on the Ukrainian peoples to actually create that technology. So when the war was declared last year, there was a lot of, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Because the first thing, of course, is let's get our people out safely, or what do we need to do to protect our people and to help our people? The second is, so we have that people part that has been addressed. The second is, how is the fact that they are trying to survive and protect their families, and the last thing on their mind, as it should be, is work. Although we had a lot of people that say, I just want to work because I want to be distracted. How is that going to then impact the development of the technologies and looking at the actual what was on their roadmaps for the next year, what was on the roadmaps for the coming years? And this is not this is a trend across the legal technology industry. I'm not speaking for Thomson Reuters whatsoever. I'm not speaking for us in particular, but this is across, I heard from a number of organizations. And so there was that adjustment as saying, okay, we have to protect our people. We have to see what we can do to support and to help them. And then let's look at the technologies and say, okay, what do we need to be doing to then push those technologies forward? So it'll be interesting to see if any report, to my knowledge, no reports have come out, but it'll be interesting to see if any reports do come out in regards to the amount of technology that maybe their roadmaps haven't progressed as they would have liked because of the Ukrainian engineers that maybe weren't able to work on products. But on the flip side, I think that the war in Ukraine has also shown so many of us not only the resilience of your peoples, but also how you were able to carry on business a lot of the time. And the rest of us, we're all thinking, how is this, like, how are you working and how are you doing this when you're being bought? It's just, it's shocking that to carry on and to continue to cater to your clients, even though you're not there in person or even though you're not with them. And so I think something that the rest of the world has learned from Ukrainian lawyers and those who are still either in Ukraine or have migrated is that technology is so important because they've been utilizing technology to continue to work, even though they don't have, there's no offices anymore. You don't have offices anymore. You don't have the ability to go into a client to have a meeting. Is that the reliance on Zoom, the reliance on platforms to have all of your documents, you're not carrying documents anymore, is that you have all of those in document management systems online, so that realistically all you need is your laptop, and then you can run your whole legal practice, which frankly, again, someone should do a major study on how, Mykyta, you, for example, how you're running your practice, or how anyone on this call, how you're running your practices fully remotely and digitally, and saying, we've done this and we did it in a war zone. Legal profession, you can do it too. And so I think it's phenomenal what the legal profession, both from legal technology, but also from the legal profession, can learn from all of you in Ukraine.
Okay, yeah, thank you.